Your performance has been consistently below expectations. Marcus Webb's voice carried across the conference room like he was reading a grocery list. I stared at the document in front of me, my name printed neatly at the top, but the words underneath weren't mine. Projects I'd led successfully were now listed as failures. Deadlines I'd met early were marked as missed. My hands started trembling as I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't my self-review. This was a rewrite. Marcus slid a performance improvement plan across the table, his expression neutral, almost bored. We need to see significant changes in the next 60 days, or we'll have to reconsider your position here. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. The meeting ended in silence. I walked back to my desk feeling like I'd just witnessed my own professional execution, and somehow, I was the only one who knew it wasn't real. I locked myself in the bathroom stall on the 3rd floor, the one nobody used because the light flickered constantly. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing all the air out of my lungs. I read through the review again on my phone, each sentence landing like a punch. Failed to deliver the quarterly analysis on time. I'd submitted it 3 days early. Demonstrated poor collaboration skills. My team had nominated me for the Teamwork Award last month. The humiliation burned through me, hot and sharp. But underneath it, something else was growing. Anger. Not the explosive kind, but the cold, calculating kind that sharpens your focus instead of clouding it. I wiped my face, straightened my blazer, and walked back to my desk. To everyone else, I looked fine. Inside, something had fundamentally changed. I wasn't going to cry about this. I was going to document it. By Thursday morning, the shift in the office was impossible to ignore. My calendar had been mysteriously cleared of 3 major project meetings. When I asked about it, Marcus's assistant told me the meetings had been restructured and my attendance was no longer required. In the break room, 2 colleagues I'd worked with for years suddenly found their coffee extremely interesting when I walked in. The Jameson account, which I'd been managing for 8 months, was reassigned to Tyler without explanation or handover meeting. I watched it happen in real time through a group email where my name was simply removed from the thread. The performance review hadn't just attacked my record. It had poisoned how everyone saw me. Within 48 hours, I'd gone from respected senior analyst to someone people avoided in hallways. The isolation was deliberate, efficient, and utterly devastating. I requested a private meeting with Marcus on Friday afternoon, thinking maybe if I approached him calmly, professionally, we could clear up what was obviously a mistake. He listened to my concerns with his hands folded on his desk, nodding occasionally, his face arranged in an expression of patient understanding. I hear what you're saying, but I think you're being a bit emotional about this, he said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child. The PIP is actually an opportunity. You should be grateful we're investing in your development rather than making harder decisions. His tone was so reasonable, so measured, that for a moment I questioned my own memory. Had I missed those deadlines? Was my work actually subpar? Then I remembered the email timestamps, the client thank you notes, the metrics. No. I wasn't crazy. He was gaslighting me in plain sight, and doing it so smoothly that even I almost fell for it. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, I opened my laptop and pulled up the file of my original self-review, the one I'd submitted 4 weeks ago. I'd kept a copy, just habit. I opened it side by side with the version Marcus had read to me. My stomach dropped. Entire paragraphs had been altered. Where I'd written successfully led the Jameson account transition, resulting in 23% revenue increase, the final version said struggled to maintain client relationships, requiring management intervention. Where I documented delivered quarterly analysis 3 days ahead of schedule, it now read missed critical deadlines on quarterly reporting. This wasn't a difference of opinion or interpretation. This was systematic falsification. My hands shook as I took screenshots, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. This wasn't just unfair. This was evidence. And evidence could be used. Monday morning, I made a decision. I stopped defending myself. In the PIP meeting, when Marcus listed my supposed failures, I nodded and took notes. When Tyler made a snide comment about my recent struggles in the team meeting, I smiled politely and said nothing. I watched confusion flicker across Marcus's face. He'd expected me to fight, to protest, to give him more ammunition. Instead, I became compliant, agreeable, almost invisible. What he didn't see was the USB drive in my bag, now containing every email I'd ever sent him, every project document with my name on it, every piece of correspondence that contradicted his narrative. What he didn't know was that silence could be a strategy. While he thought he was watching me break, I was building something he couldn't see. A case. A timeline. A trap. The PIP meetings became a weekly ritual of choreographed humiliation. Marcus would sit across from me with a folder full of my supposed mistakes, each one documented with his notes, his interpretations, his version of events. Your response time to the Crawford inquiry was unacceptable, he'd say, checking a box on his form. I'd submitted that response within 2 hours. He knew it. I knew it. But he wrote down delayed response, client dissatisfaction anyway. Every success I managed was dismissed as too little, too late. Every tiny mistake was magnified into evidence of incompetence. He was building a paper trail, meticulously constructing the documentation he'd need to fire me without liability. What he didn't realize was that I was recording every meeting on my phone, hidden in my bag. His voice, his words, his lies, all saved and timestamped. Let him build his trail. I was building mine right alongside it. Working late on a Wednesday, long after most people had left, I logged into the company's document management system to retrieve a file. That's when I saw it. The metadata panel on the side of the screen, showing version history for documents. My hand moved almost automatically, searching for my performance review file. When I found it, my heart started racing. The system showed 3 versions. Version 1, submitted by me on March 15th. Version 2, edited by Marcus Webb on March 30th. Version 3, finalized on April 2nd. I clicked through them, watching my words transform into his lies, timestamp by timestamp. He'd edited my review 2 weeks after I submitted it, after the official deadline, without my knowledge or consent. The system had tracked everything. Every change, every deletion, every rewrite. The betrayal became undeniable, documented, irrefutable. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than fear. I felt power. The emotional weight of staying quiet was crushing me. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning with my heart already racing, dreading the day ahead. In my car before work, I'd sit in the parking garage and cry, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My sister called me 3 times a week, worried because I'd stopped returning messages. My friends invited me out, and I made excuses because I couldn't pretend to be normal anymore. But I didn't break. Every morning, I wiped my face, fixed my makeup, and walked into that building with my head up. Every insult I swallowed made the truth heavier. Every lie I let him tell added weight to the case I was building. Some people might call it suffering. I called it collecting ammunition. Because I knew something Marcus didn't. The longer he thought he was winning, the harder he'd fall when the truth came out. I scheduled a meeting with Human Resources, keeping my approach careful and non-confrontational. I sat across from Patricia Hollis, the HR director, and expressed my concerns about inconsistencies in my review process. I didn't accuse. I didn't demand. I just asked questions. Patricia listened with practiced sympathy, nodding at all the right moments, taking notes on her legal pad. I understand this is stressful, she said when I finished. Performance improvement plans can feel overwhelming. But they really are designed to help employees succeed. She promised to look into it and suggested I focus on the feedback Marcus had provided. Walking out of her office, I felt the door close on any hope that HR would protect me. They weren't neutral. They were protecting the company, which meant protecting Marcus. I was alone in this. That realization hurt, but it also clarified something important. I couldn't rely on the system to save me. I had to save myself. The isolation intensified with surgical precision. On Tuesday, my access to the client database was removed. Temporary system maintenance, the IT ticket said. Marcus stopped copying me on emails about projects I'd originated. In meetings, people looked past me when asking questions, directing them to Tyler instead. The break room went silent when I entered. My desk felt like an island in the middle of the office, everyone steering clear like I was contagious. One afternoon, I overheard Marcus telling someone in the hallway that I was going through some performance issues and they should probably route those requests elsewhere for now. The loneliness was suffocating. But it also revealed something crucial. This wasn't random dysfunction. This was coordinated, intentional, escalating. Marcus wasn't just trying to document poor performance. He was creating conditions that would make me quit. Every removed access, every reassigned project, every cold shoulder was designed to push me out. Understanding his strategy didn't make it hurt less. But it did make me more determined to stay. I started applying to other companies, not because I wanted to leave, but because I needed options. Every phone interview reminded me that I was competent, valuable, and respected outside these walls. Recruiters were interested in my experience. Hiring managers praised my portfolio. In those conversations, I wasn't the struggling employee Marcus had invented. I was the professional I'd always been. 3 weeks into my job search, I received an offer from a competitor. Senior analyst position, 20% salary increase, better benefits. The recruiter said I came highly recommended from former colleagues. I stared at the offer letter for a long time that night, feeling something like relief wash over me. But I didn't sign it. Not yet. Accepting meant running, and I wasn't ready to run. I wanted Marcus to face consequences. I wanted the truth to matter. So I kept the offer in my drawer, a safety net and a reminder that I had value, even if this company couldn't see it anymore. The announcement came on a Monday morning, mundane and bureaucratic. The company was conducting a routine compliance audit, reviewing HR practices and documentation. Most people barely paid attention. It was just corporate procedure, the kind of thing that happened every few years and meant nothing to anyone who wasn't in legal or HR. But when I read that email, my pulse spiked. Audits meant records. Logs. Paper trails. Everything Marcus had been so carefully documenting would be examined by people who didn't know his narrative, who didn't have a reason to protect him. The ground beneath his confidence suddenly felt less stable. That afternoon, I made backup copies of everything I'd collected. Every screenshot, every recording, every email. I uploaded them to a secure cloud storage and sent copies to my personal email. If HR came asking questions, I'd be ready. And if they didn't, well, auditors had a way of finding what they were looking for, especially when someone pointed them in the right direction. 2 weeks into the audit, everything changed. Patricia from HR called me directly, asking if I could provide documentation related to my performance review. Not Marcus. Me. We're just verifying records as part of the compliance process, she explained, her tone more careful than it had been in our first meeting. I arrived at her office with a folder I'd prepared specifically for this moment. Inside was everything. My original self-review with the submission timestamp. Screenshots of the version history showing Marcus's unauthorized edits. Emails proving I'd met deadlines he claimed I'd missed. Client correspondence praising work he documented as failures. I laid it out methodically, chronologically, without commentary or emotion. I let the documents speak for themselves. Patricia's expression shifted as she flipped through the pages. The practiced sympathy disappeared, replaced by something sharper. Concern. Maybe even alarm. She asked if she could keep copies. I'd already made them. When I left her office this time, the air felt different. Something had shifted. Someone was finally looking at the truth. Marcus was called into an unscheduled meeting with HR on Thursday afternoon. I watched him walk past my desk toward the executive wing, and for the first time since this started, his confident stride faltered. He was there for 90 minutes. When he came back, his face was carefully blank, but his jaw was tight. He didn't look at me. Didn't acknowledge me. Just went straight into his office and closed the door. The office buzzed with quiet speculation. Nobody knew what the meeting was about, but everyone could sense something had changed. Tyler asked me casually if I knew what was going on. I shrugged and said I had no idea. But I did know. I could see it in the way Marcus avoided eye contact for the rest of the day. I could feel it in the way the energy in the office had shifted, like everyone sensed a coming storm but couldn't quite identify its source. Something had cracked in his armor, and we both knew it. The following Monday, Patricia called me back to her office. This time, the HR compliance officer was there too, a woman named Vanessa Torres who specialized in workplace investigations. They asked me to formally explain my version of events, starting from the beginning. My hands shook as I began talking, not from fear but from the weight of months of silence finally lifting. I spoke clearly, methodically, walking them through the timeline. My original submission. The review meeting where nothing matched what I'd written. The PIP meetings. The isolation. The reassigned projects. I showed them the metadata proving unauthorized edits. I played recordings of Marcus dismissing my concerns and gaslighting me about deadlines I'd met. I provided emails from clients contradicting his documentation. Facts did the talking. I didn't editorialize or dramatize. I didn't need revenge. I needed accuracy. When I finished, Vanessa and Patricia exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "Thank you for your thoroughness," Vanessa said quietly. "This is very helpful to our investigation." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus's carefully constructed narrative collapsed under scrutiny. The version histories proved he'd edited my review after the official submission deadline, violating company policy. The access logs showed he'd made changes without authorization or notification. Email timestamps contradicted every missed deadline he'd documented. Client feedback directly refuted his claims about my performance. His story unraveled not dramatically, but clinically, like a building being dismantled piece by piece until nothing remained but the foundation of lies it had been built on. I wasn't part of those investigation meetings, but I heard things. Other employees were interviewed. Marcus's previous performance reviews were examined for patterns. The IT department was asked to pull communication records. Watching it happen felt surreal, like witnessing something I'd dreamed about but never actually believed would occur. The truth was finally doing what I'd never been able to do alone. It was exposing him. Marcus approached me in the parking garage one evening, his voice low and suddenly respectful. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot," he said, hands in his pockets, trying to appear casual. "Maybe we could reset, start fresh. Put all this behind us and move forward professionally." I stood there holding my car keys, looking at the man who'd spent months systematically trying to destroy my career and reputation. The man who'd rewritten my words, gaslit me in meetings, isolated me from colleagues, and documented lies to justify firing me. He wanted to reset. To move forward. Like none of it had happened. I didn't respond. I just looked at him until the silence became uncomfortable, until he shifted his weight and glanced away. Then I got in my car and drove away. The moment for reconciliation had passed the second he decided my truth was something he could rewrite. Some things can't be reset. Some betrayals can't be undone. And I wasn't interested in pretending otherwise. The office atmosphere changed almost overnight. People started making eye contact with me again in hallways. In meetings, my input was suddenly requested, considered, discussed. Someone added me back to the Jameson account emails without comment or explanation. The whispers I'd been excluded from now seemed to be about something else entirely, though nobody said it directly. Patricia stopped by my desk one afternoon with a casual comment about procedural reviews and corrective measures being implemented. Tyler, who'd been so quick to claim my projects, suddenly seemed uncertain about how to interact with me. The version of me Marcus had created was dissolving, replaced by the professional I'd always been beneath his manipulation. It wasn't dramatic. There was no announcement, no public apology. Just a gradual shift in perception, like watching fog lift from a landscape and seeing what had been there all along. People looked at me differently now. Not with pity, but with recognition. And maybe, I thought, with a little bit of respect. HR scheduled a meeting with me 3 weeks after my formal testimony. Patricia and Vanessa presented their findings and recommendations. The investigation had substantiated my claims. Marcus had violated multiple company policies. They were prepared to offer remediation, assurances of no retaliation, and even wanted to discuss promotion opportunities to recognize my resilience and professionalism during this difficult period. I listened carefully to everything they said. I asked clarifying questions about the investigation's conclusions. I thanked them for their thoroughness. Then I told them I'd already accepted a position at another company. Patricia looked genuinely surprised. "We'd really like to retain you," she said. "We can discuss compensation adjustments, relocation to a different department, whatever you need to feel comfortable staying." But I'd made my decision. Staying meant surviving in a place that had let this happen. Leaving meant winning on my terms. I'd already given my 2 weeks' notice that morning. This meeting was just closure. Marcus Webb was quietly dismissed from the company on a Tuesday afternoon. There was no announcement, no company-wide email, no explanation offered. He was just gone. His office cleaned out, his name removed from the directory, his calendar invitations cancelled. One day he was there, and the next day he wasn't. The quietness of his removal felt appropriate, somehow. It mirrored the quiet cruelty he'd inflicted, the subtle ways he'd tried to erase me without anyone noticing. Tyler was reassigned to another director. The projects Marcus had overseen were distributed among other managers. It was like the company was trying to forget he'd ever existed, erasing him the same way he'd tried to erase me. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Just a kind of hollow relief. He was gone, but the months of damage couldn't be undone. Still, there was something meaningful in knowing the truth had mattered. That documentation and persistence had led to consequences. That someone had finally been held accountable. My last day at the company felt surreal. I packed my desk slowly, sorting through 3 years of accumulated work life. Photos, awards, coffee mugs, the things that had made this space mine. Colleagues stopped by throughout the day, apologizing for not supporting me earlier, for believing Marcus's version of events, for contributing to my isolation. Some of them cried. Some of them made excuses. I forgave them, not because what they'd done didn't hurt, but because I was leaving and I wanted to leave without bitterness weighing me down. Carrying that anger into my new job would only poison my fresh start. As I walked out of the building for the last time, carrying my box of personal items, I felt lighter than I had in months. The building that had been my prison for so long was now just a building. Marcus was just a man who'd made terrible choices. And I was free. My first day at the new company felt like breathing for the first time in months. The onboarding was respectful and organized. My new manager, Helen, actually listened when I spoke in meetings and asked thoughtful questions about my ideas. Nobody looked at me with suspicion or pity. Nobody questioned my competence or made subtle comments about my recent struggles. I was just another professional starting a new role, bringing experience and skills to a team that wanted them. That night, I called my sister and told her I'd made it through my first day. She cried. She'd watched me struggle through the darkness, had listened to me doubt myself, had seen how much it had cost me. "I knew you'd land on your feet," she said. But what surprised me wasn't that I'd survived. It was that I'd done more than survive. I'd fought back, documented everything, and ensured the truth mattered. I'd refused to disappear quietly. And now I was somewhere better, somewhere I could actually grow. 6 months into my new job, I heard through former colleagues that Marcus hadn't recovered professionally. He'd found another position quickly, but lost it within 3 months when his new employer contacted our company for references and learned about the investigation. Apparently, the details had spread through industry networks, the way these things do. Recruiters stopped returning his calls. His LinkedIn showed he'd taken a significant step down, working at a much smaller firm in a non-management role. I felt no joy hearing this, no sense of victory or revenge. Just closure. The truth had done what I never could have done through anger or retaliation. It had followed him, naturally and inevitably, as truth tends to do. His choices had consequences that extended beyond my experience, affecting his career in ways I'd never intended but couldn't control. I thought about reaching out, considered sending some kind of message. But what would I say? In the end, I did nothing. He'd written his own ending when he decided to rewrite mine. Looking back now, almost a year later, I understand what Marcus tried to do wasn't just about pushing me out. It was about control, about having the power to define someone else's reality, to rewrite their value and competence to serve his purposes. By refusing to disappear quietly, by documenting everything and insisting the truth mattered, I reclaimed not just my career but my voice and my story. He tried to rewrite me into someone incompetent, someone disposable, someone who could be erased without consequence. Instead, I rewrote my own ending. I chose to fight back with facts instead of emotions, with evidence instead of accusations. I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent long enough to build an irrefutable case. My career didn't just survive his sabotage. It flourished beyond it. And every time I walk into my office now, treated with respect and valued for my contributions, I remember that nobody gets to write my story but me.